I think royal duty is extremely important. I think it's part of the fabric of what's the royal family and any future.
Prince William just made a move that no one saw coming, and it's left King Charles stunned and Camilla visibly shaken. A quiet ceremony turned into royal chaos when William stepped up and took control of the monarchy's future. Was this a power grab or the beginning of a new era? And why was Camilla completely left out? What happens next could change everything. Stay tuned, because this royal twist is far from over. The day the palace stood still. It began like any other royal engagement. Flags fluttering, the air crisp with ceremony. Buckingham Palace was dressed in its finest. Rows of white roses lined the courtyard, and the Union Jack soared high above. Inside, dignitaries from across the Commonwealth filled the grand hall with the quiet hum of polite conversation. Cameras clicked softly. Royal aides moved swiftly. The entire event was meant to celebrate continuity and stability. But something felt off. Prince William had made an unusual request: to speak, alone. Not with King Charles, not with Camilla, just him. A short address, they said. Nothing major, but royal insiders weren't convinced. In a world where every moment is scripted, every word pre-approved, William's solo spotlight raised more than a few eyebrows. As he took his place near the throne, aides held their breath. They'd seen that look before. The look his mother once wore when she went off script. Calm, determined, unshakable. And they were right to be nervous. Because that moment, beneath the gold-lined ceiling of Buckingham Palace, wasn't just another photo op. It was the start of something no one expected. The end of business as usual. One royal aide reportedly whispered under her breath, "Something's about to change. You can feel it." And they could, because what came next would leave the monarchy reeling. A voice that changed everything. When Prince William began to speak, his tone was calm, almost too calm. There was no grand flair, no dramatic gestures, but his words carried weight. Within moments, it was clear. This wasn't a speech. It was a statement. He spoke of legacy, but also of change, of how the crown must walk among the people and not simply hover above them. Then, the turning point. William declared the beginning of a new royal framework, one built on transparency, service, and shared leadership. In a move that stunned the entire room, he announced the formation of a modern advisory council, where Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, would take expanded roles in official royal duties, not just symbolically, structurally. And then came the real shock. With the king's blessing, William would begin stepping into a quasi-regency role. He didn't call it that, but the message was clear. He would now lead many of the crown's day-to-day public functions, both domestic and international. One royal commentator later said, "It was quiet, but it was revolutionary." There was one name missing, though, one person who hadn't been mentioned once: Camilla. And that silence said more than any speech ever could. Camilla's omission and visible collapse. As William continued laying out the vision for a new modern monarchy, it was impossible to ignore what wasn't being said. Camilla, queen consort, and for years a visible partner in the crown, was nowhere in the new plans. Not a title, not a duty, not even a thank you. Observers watched as Camilla's expression changed. At first, she sat still, listening intently. But then her eyes began to flicker. Her grip tightened on the ceremony program in her lap. She shifted in her seat. Her face paled. And then, she collapsed. It wasn't a dramatic faint, but it was unmistakable. Her body slumped forward. Palace aides rushed to her side. King Charles stood up in alarm. His voice caught on a single word. "Camilla!" Gasps echoed through the room. Cameras, still rolling, caught every second. Within minutes, medical staff were by her side. She was lifted onto a stretcher and quietly escorted out. And just like that, the celebration had become a crisis. The Queen Consort, taken out of the ceremony she was once expected to help lead, now looked like a figure being written out of history in real time. One palace source later said, "It was more than just stress. She felt erased, like she didn't exist in the future William was planning." And while the world reeled from the sight, Buckingham Palace entered full damage control mode. But William, he didn't blink. Shockwaves inside the palace. In the hours after the ceremony, Buckingham Palace was anything but calm. Phones rang off the hook, press officers scrambled, and royal advisors were locked in private meetings long into the night. King Charles, already dealing with health concerns, looked visibly shaken. Some said he was blindsided. Others whispered he had been warned, but didn't believe his son would go through with it. Now the crown was facing more than just a PR issue. It was staring down an internal fracture. The question on everyone's lips: had Camilla been deliberately excluded? Was this a calculated move from William to sideline her? Or had something happened behind the scenes that no one was talking about? One senior aide told a British paper, William knew exactly what this speech meant. He knew who would be hurt by it, and he still chose to do it. Some called it bold leadership. Others called it betrayal. Either way, the palace was no longer unified. There were two paths forming, one behind King Charles, the other behind William, and somewhere in between, Camilla had fallen. But what drove William to go this far? What was the real reason behind his quiet but powerful rebellion? To understand that, we need to go back to Diana. William's true intentions. Prince William didn't make this move on a whim. Sources say this plan, this shift, had been building for months, maybe longer, and at the heart of it was one person, Princess Diana. Diana's influence never really left William. Her values, compassion, accessibility, emotional honesty were deeply rooted in him. And many believe his decision to restructure the monarchy was his way of honoring the mother he lost too soon. One royal historian put it plainly, "This wasn't a speech. It was a course correction, a quiet answer to everything Diana stood for and everything the firm ignored." William sees the crown not as a relic of the past, but as something that must serve the present. And for years, he's watched as tradition got in the way of progress. Now, with Charles's health uncertain and the public increasingly disconnected from the royals, he saw an opening, and he took it. That meant change, big change, including pulling power away from those he believed no longer reflected the values of the crown, including Camilla. To some, it looked like rebellion. But to William, it was something else entirely. It was restoration. But in trying to restore his mother's vision, has he shattered his father's? The answers begin to unfold in the next chapter, where Camilla's quiet rise meets a very public fall. Camilla's rise and fall. For over 2 decades, Camilla fought a battle few could see, and even fewer expected her to win. From public enemy number 1 to Queen Consort, her transformation was nothing short of astonishing. She had endured public scrutiny, private heartbreak, and relentless comparisons to Princess Diana. But through it all, she held her ground. This was her moment, or so she thought. Behind the palace gates, Camilla had finally stepped into the spotlight, standing beside King Charles not just as his wife, but as a central figure in the monarchy. She had earned her title, some believed, through resilience and grace. But to others, including Prince William, it was never truly hers to keep. When William announced his vision of the monarchy's future, and her name wasn't included, it wasn't just a snub. It was a clear message. Her time at the heart of royal life was over. One former royal correspondent shared, "Camilla climbed the mountain only for the rug to be pulled from under her at the top." It was more than emotional. It was structural. She wasn't just omitted, she was erased. And it hurt. The collapse during William's speech, many now believe, wasn't simply stress or exhaustion. It was the emotional culmination of years of pressure. Camilla had spent so long trying to fit into the crown's tight mold, only to find herself on the outside once again. The public reaction was split. Some offered sympathy. Others said her downfall was inevitable. But behind palace walls, one thing was certain. The Queen Consort had been removed from the new vision of the crown. So, what does this mean for King Charles? Is he still in control? Or is the monarchy now being led from the shadows? Let's take a look at the man behind the crown and the growing question of his authority. A king without command. King Charles has always been a man of tradition. Raised for the throne, trained to preserve legacy, not to disrupt it. But as the world around him changes, it seems his grip on power is beginning to slip. In the wake of William's speech and Camilla's collapse, palace advisors are divided. Some insist the king was aware of the plan. Others believe he was completely blindsided. Either way, it's clear that William's voice now echoes louder in royal chambers than his father's. A senior royal source told a British publication, "The king still wears the crown, but his son is calling the shots." The moment symbolized a power shift, not declared, but undeniably felt. Behind closed doors, discussions turned tense. Should Charles reaffirm his authority or quietly allow the transition to unfold? Some feared that resisting William's vision could damage the monarchy even further. Others argued that yielding would erase Charles's legacy before it had even fully begun. But for Charles, it's more personal than political. This isn't just about the crown, it's about his family. About watching his wife publicly humiliated. About seeing his son seize the reins not with violence, but with calm precision. He's faced rebellion before, but never from within. And as those closest to him debate next steps, one thing is clear. The palace is no longer speaking with one voice. It's whispering behind locked doors, caught between loyalty and evolution. But while the halls of power tremble, something else is shifting. The symbolism of the monarchy itself. Because Camilla's collapse wasn't just about a person, it was about a system on the edge. The collapse that changed the monarchy. There are moments in royal history that are caught on camera, but remembered for their meaning, not their visuals. Camilla's collapse was one of them. It wasn't just the sight of the Queen Consort slumping forward that struck the public, it was what it represented. A system long defined by hierarchy and stability had visibly buckled under emotional strain. For the first time in recent memory, the monarchy didn't look poised, it looked fragile. Medical staff later described it as an episode of acute stress. But palace insiders offered a deeper take. She didn't just faint, one aide said. She broke. Something inside her broke. Camilla, once the symbol of endurance, became a symbol of the past collapsing in real time. Her fall echoed something larger, that a new era was no longer coming. It had already arrived. Across social media, the footage spread like wildfire. Hashtags like #RoyalReckoning and #MonarchyShift trended globally. Commentators called it the end of an old guard, and for once, even the most loyal royal supporters were unsure how to defend what had happened. Inside the palace, the damage wasn't just PR, it was emotional. Staff members who had supported Camilla through her rise were now watching her be quietly pushed aside. Her calendar was reportedly cleared for weeks. No public engagements, no statements, just silence. It was as if the royal institution was slowly moving on without her. But not everyone mourned the moment. For many younger royal watchers, the collapse signaled something they'd long hoped for, a break from the past and the arrival of something modern. And leading that future, without saying a word, was Catherine. Public frenzy and social media, mayhem. The monarchy has always been shaped behind closed doors, but in 2025, it's judged in real time. Within minutes of Camilla's collapse, social media turned Buckingham Palace into a battlefield. Twitter exploded with hot takes. TikTok edits contrasted William's bold speech with Camilla's fading figure. YouTube creators dubbed it the moment everything changed. The public was divided. Some expressed deep sympathy, saying the Queen Consort had been unfairly erased after years of service. Others were far less forgiving, calling it karma for years of quiet maneuvering behind palace walls. One viral tweet read, "Diana walked so Catherine could rise. Camilla collapsed so the monarchy could evolve." It was harsh, but it was also the sentiment many were feeling. A generational divide had never felt more obvious. Young people overwhelmingly supported William and Catherine's new direction. Older audiences felt uneasy about the pace of change and the pain it seemed to cause. Inside the palace, the mood was tense. What had started as a carefully staged ceremonial event had now become a media circus. Advisors were rushing to draft responses, debating whether to clarify Camilla's condition or let the news cycle move on. But the headlines wouldn't stop. The Queen Consort faints as William reshapes monarchy. A palace divided. Who really holds the power? The world was watching, not just to see what happened, but what would happen next. And while the public dissected every frame of Camilla's fall, another figure quietly rose from the shadows, with a presence that spoke louder than any speech. Catherine steps forward. In the middle of the noise, one person remained calm, graceful, and unshaken: Princess Catherine. Just days after the chaos at Buckingham Palace, she appeared at a small, previously scheduled charity event. There were no grand statements, no heavy-handed gestures, just Catherine, standing before a crowd dressed in royal blue, speaking softly and clearly. Her message? Simple. The future is about unity, service together. In those 7 words, she did what no press release or palace memo could. She reassured a shaken public that the monarchy was still standing, still moving forward, still connected. And people listened. Online, the response was immediate. Clips of her speech went viral. Fans called her the quiet anchor of the royal family. Others said she had officially stepped into her destiny, not just as a future queen, but as the public heart of the new monarchy. Inside palace walls, her presence sent a different message, one that couldn't be ignored. While Camilla faded into the background, Catherine was stepping into full focus. Not aggressively, not loudly, but with the same strategic grace that's defined her rise since day one. As one royal commentator put it, Catherine didn't claim power. She earned it through patience, dignity, and unwavering calm. And now, as the monarchy stares down an uncertain future, all eyes are no longer on Charles or even William. They're on her, because the crown is changing, and she's already wearing it, in everything but name. Behind closed doors, the silent war. As the public watched events unfold with fascination, inside Buckingham Palace, the mood was very different. Tense, uneasy, and deeply divided. What had been a carefully controlled monarchy now felt like a house divided. Senior aides were working around the clock. Meetings ran late into the night. And for the first time in years, decisions weren't flowing from the top down, but from somewhere in the middle. One royal insider described it best. There's no clear leader anymore, only power being passed through silence. King Charles was said to be exhausted, still reeling from Camilla's collapse and the global attention it brought. Though he attempted to maintain public composure, privately, he was struggling to regain control. His authority, already limited by health concerns, was now being overshadowed by William's rising influence. Behind the scenes, two camps were forming. One loyal to Charles and tradition, favoring slower, careful reform. The other backing William, supporting fast, sweeping modernization. In the middle were those watching, waiting, and whispering. The old guard was fracturing. And what of Camilla? Her presence around the palace had been quietly reduced. Her schedule cleared. Her public engagements paused indefinitely. There were no official statements, just rumors of rest, of recovery, and of retreat. Meanwhile, William was already stepping into larger roles, attending foreign briefings, leading diplomatic calls, overseeing key domestic causes with Catherine. It wasn't just symbolic anymore, it was operational. The royal household had entered a new phase, one where the king still wore the crown, but the power was clearly shifting. And yet, through all the whispers and late-night talks, one truth lingered. Something bigger was happening. A change that no title or tradition could undo. Because what had once been the quiet rise of a new generation now looked more and more like a transfer of the throne in all but name. And soon, everyone, from Parliament to the public, would be asking the same question. Has the next monarch already taken the throne without a coronation? A crown in transition. Across the centuries, the British monarchy has weathered storms, wars, abdications, scandals. But what's happening now feels different. Not loud, not dramatic, but quietly irreversible. William's speech wasn't a rebellion. It was a signal. A message that the old ways were no longer enough. That being royal was no longer about tradition alone. It had to mean something real, something modern, human, and connected. And perhaps most importantly, it wasn't a request for permission. It was a declaration of direction. As one royal analyst put it, the transition has already begun. The institution just hasn't admitted it yet. The monarchy is no longer operating as it was. Power has shifted. Roles have changed. And key figures, like Camilla, have faded into the shadows of a new vision. The woman who spent decades climbing to the highest role available to her is now, in many ways, a ghost in the palace corridors. Not formally removed, but no longer included. This isn't about cruelty. It's about inevitability. And William? He's not waiting for a formal moment to step in. He's already acting as the de facto head of the family, managing key international affairs, coordinating with Commonwealth leaders, and redefining royal priorities. on his own terms. And standing beside him, Catherine, steady, polished, relatable, the monarchy's not-so-secret weapon. With the king slowly stepping back and Camilla quietly stepping aside, the royal spotlight now shines fully on William and Kate. Together, they represent the monarchy's future, not just in bloodline, but in style, presence, and public favor. And for the British people, especially the younger generations, it's a welcome change. So, has the crown officially changed hands? No, but has its weight been passed on? Absolutely. And with every step William takes, that unspoken shift becomes more and more visible. Which brings us to the final question, the one everyone is asking, whether they say it out loud or not. Has the new monarch already arrived? Charles is still king. That's the official line. The coronation took place. The oath was sworn. The crown was placed upon his head. But if you look past the ceremony, if you listen closely to what's being said and what's being left unsaid, you'll see the truth most aren't ready to admit. William is already ruling, not officially, not legally, but culturally, publicly, and emotionally. He has become the face, the voice, and the center of the monarchy. One senior royal aide reportedly said, "The king signs the papers, but the world listens to William." The shift didn't happen overnight. It began with quiet appearances, subtle changes, then the speech, then the restructuring, then Camilla's collapse. And now, there's no denying it. Charles may still sit on the throne, but William has already stepped into the role of monarch in everything but name. The world has taken notice. Global leaders reach out to William first. Public approval ratings show a sharp preference for him and Catherine over the current monarch. And even within palace walls, his team is operating with a confidence once reserved for a sovereign. Camilla's absence only adds to the speculation. With no queen consort visibly beside the king, and William taking on increasing public duties with his wife, the optics couldn't be clearer. The future has arrived early. But is this progress, or a quiet betrayal? Supporters say it's long overdue, a bold step into a modern world that demands transparency, relevance, and emotional intelligence. Critics call it a coup in slow motion, a disruption of royal order masked as strategy. And as for Charles, he remains quiet, dignified, still wearing the crown, but less present, less central. This isn't just a story about a family anymore. It's a story about an institution transforming before our eyes. And as one commentator perfectly summarized, the past collapsed in a garden full of white roses, and from its ruins, a new royal order rose. So, is it the dawn of a new era, or the beginning of the end? That's for history to decide. But one thing is certain, the monarchy will never look the same again. So, has William just reshaped the monarchy right in front of us? With Camilla sidelined and Charles shaken, the crown may already be shifting hands. What do you think? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more dramatic royal updates. Thanks for watching.